Om Hyan Timundasya Janam Sana Slakya Saksham Militam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svam Rabkadamyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shio Shiyuda Padakamalam Shigam Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Jagajatam Sakanaragnatam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Sarutam Bhajana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagalita Shivshakam Vitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jatpate Gopesha Gopkakanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kansana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavana Sutadevi Pranamama He Priye Vanka Kalpa Visha Kripa Sinve Visha Patnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharani Nirvishishya Sunyavadi Paskachai Dasataya. I will
Recording in progress.
I will start with reciting some verses from Krishna Lila Stav of Sanatan Goswami. Sarva Sastra Bprs Sarva Vedeka Sattvala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnatya Sarva Lokaika Drikpada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalitvanto Titaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you who are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of the Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna, who has returned among us. Paramananda Patnaya Prema Varshyak Sarayate Sarvanda Sarvasefyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisance unto you by reading one attains transcendental bliss, for your syllables rain pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are the incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandha Matsangin Matko Man Mahadana Manistarika Matbhahya Mat Ananda Namostute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my great fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisance to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin atinochat shataraka asamun shakadachi mam premarit kantayospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O giver of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplifter of the very fallen, please do not ever leave me. Please become manifested upon my heart and my throat, accompanied by pure love of Krishna. So today we will continue with chapter 11 of the Uddhav Gita, the 11th canto, chapter 11, and we will discuss today from verse 8 onwards. We read already verse 8 last lesson, but it's an important verse because in the next 8-9 verses will comment on this verse. So we heard in this Uddhav Gita so far the the encounter of King Yadu with the Avadhuta Brahman Dattatreya. And Dattatreya was a liberated person, and King Yadu asked Dattatreya, how did you become liberated? And then Dattatreya explained how he became liberated by learning from 24 spiritual masters, learning from nature, from the sun, from the moon, from water, from trees, from the sun, from so many phenomena in nature. And then Uddhav, who is hearing the story from Lord Krishna, we may not forget in the context that Uddhav is hearing this message because Lord Krishna wants to give that he takes sannyas, goes to Badrinarayan and present this same knowledge to the sages of Badarika, because they wanted the association of Krishna, but he could not go. So then Krishna Uddhav wants to know, how do I become then liberated? And Krishna explains, yes, first one has to follow Varnashram, we heard in the previous chapter, acting according to one psycho-physical nature, and at the same time accept the spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master, and follow the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master. And then, by acting as such in the Varnashram, you will become purified and get knowledge, develop knowledge. You will go from karma to Hyan. And now this chapter 11 explains how to go from Hyan to Bhakti. But first, the symptoms of conditioned souls are described in this chapter, and this chapter 11 has 3 divisions. The first division describes the different characteristics of conditioned soul and liberated, of conditioned and liberated life, the symptoms. And then after that, then Krishna explains to Uddhav the symptoms by which one can recognize saintly persons. And at the end, he will describe various processes of devotional service that lead to liberation. Because factual liberation is acting according to one's dharma. One's dharma is serving Krishna. We are part and parcels, not from this material world, but from Krishna. And we are intimately related with him. And when we act as a spirit soul in that relationship, that is factual liberation. So now, text 8, we read it already last time, but we'll read it again today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Deyostu Nadeyastu Vitvam Satnat Yatotita Adeyastu Pideyasta Kumati Svapnadrishyata. One who is enlightened in self-realization, although living within the material body, sees himself as transcendental to the body, just as one who has arisen from a dream gives up identification with the dream body. A foolish person, however, although not identical with his material body, but transcendental to his, thinks himself to be situated in the body. Just as one who is dreaming sees himself as situated in an imaginary body. So, We have here the commentary, the purport. So can someone read the purport, please?
In Lord Krishna's discussion of the different characteristics of liberated and conditioned souls, the Lord first clarified the distinction between the eternally liberated personality of Godhead and the marginal potency, the innumerable Jivas, who are sometimes conditioned and sometimes liberated. In this and the next 9 verses, the Lord describes the different symptoms of liberated and conditioned Jiva souls. In a dream, one sees oneself in an imaginary body, but upon waking, one gives up all identification with that body. Similarly, one who has awakened to Krishna consciousness no longer identifies with the gross or subtle material bodies, nor does he become affected by the happiness and distress of material life. On the other hand, a foolish person, Kumati, does not awaken from the dream of material existence, and is afflicted with innumerable problems due to false identification with the gross and subtle material bodies. One should become situated in one's eternal spiritual identity, Nitya Swarupa. By properly identifying oneself as an eternal servant of Krishna, one becomes relieved of his false material identity, and therefore the miseries of illusory existence immediately cease, just as the anxiety of a troublesome dream ceases as soon as one awakens to his normal, pleasant surroundings. It should be understood, however, that the analogy of awakening from a dream can never be applied to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never in illusion. The Lord is eternally awake and enlightened in his own unique category called Vishnu Tattva. Such knowledge is easily understood by one who is Vidvan, or enlightened in Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. So, in addition, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj has written the following purport. Although the subject matter of a dream may remain fresh in the mind of a person when he wakes up, the illusory nature of the dream is immediately realized by him. However, those who are sleeping in the lap of material nature cannot realize the illusory nature of their existence until they awaken by means of self-realization. The seer himself is eternal, but his dreams at night and his experience during the day are of no lasting importance, because being no better than a phantasmagoria. So, we are eternal. How can we be satisfied with something temporary? We have to connect it with the eternal. So, in the purport it says, even a liberated soul who has given up the bodily concept of life will fall down if he does not take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That it's all Shama Eva Ikevalam, we heard before. So as stated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prema Mumaktuman, the actual goal of human life is love of Godhead, and no one can be considered expert without achieving this goal. So we have here heard the analogy of waking up from a dream. Come to real life, that's the message. Wake up. In the next 9 verses, the Lord will explain the difference between the conditioned and the liberated souls. Now, text 9. Indriya inyarte sugune rapikune sacha yamane sam koyan navitvam yas svakriyaha. Can someone read the translation, please?
An enlightened person who is free from the contamination of material desire does not consider himself to be the performer of bodily activities. Rather, he knows that in all such activities, it is only the senses born of the modes of nature that are contacting sense objects born of the same modes of nature.
Yeah, that sounds like Bhagavad Gita. We did hear this before in the Gita. That so can someone also read the purport, please?
Lord Krishna makes a similar statement in Bhagavad Gita 3.28.
Otherwise, yes, please.
Tattvattu mahabaho gunu karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartanta iti mattvana sajjate. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. The material body always interacts with the sense objects, for in order to survive, the body must eat, drink, speak, sleep, and so on. But an enlightened person who knows the science of Krishna consciousness never thinks that I am accepting these sense objects as my property. They are meant for my pleasure. Similarly, if the body performs a wonderful activity, a Krishna conscious person does not become proud, nor is he depressed by the failure of the body to function in a particular way. In other words, Krishna consciousness means giving up identification with the gross and subtle material bodies. One should see them as the external energy of the Lord, working under the direction of the Lord's empowered representative, Maya. One absorbed in fruitive activities work under the jurisdiction of Mahamaya, or the external illusory potency, and experiences the miseries of material existence. On the other hand, a devotee works under the internal potency called Yog Maya and remains satisfied by offering his loving service to the Lord. In either case, the Lord himself, by his multifarious potencies, is the ultimate performer of action. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one who claims to be transcendental to the bodily concept of life, but at the same time remains under the influence of material desire and mental transformation, is understood to be a cheater and the lowest type of conditioned soul.
So that's quite a revealing statement. If you are really learned, you see the futility of material desires. And you do not think that you perform the activities of the body. You see the super soul doing it. You see how the soul is only desiring. That so brings up the point. First, do we see the futility of material activities? One. And second, if we do we think ourselves the doer in this world? Then we have a purport, short purport of Bhaktivedanta Sarasvati here. The material body always interacts with the sense objects, because in order to survive, the body must eat, drink, speak, sleep, and so on. But an enlightened person who knows the signs of Krishna consciousness never thinks, these sense objects are my property, they are meant for my pleasure. No, he never thinks like that. One who is on the liberated platform. Text 10. Daivadine sariresmin kunabhafyana karmana vartamana buddhastatra kortasmiti nibachate. Can someone read the translation, please?
An unintelligent person situated within the body created by his previous fruitive activities think, I am the performer of action. Bewildered by false ego, such a foolish person is therefore bound up by the fruitive activities, which are in fact carried out by the modes of nature.
Yes, that's the conditioned state. That so we have here a short comment, purport. Someone can read the purport also, as stated in Bhagavad Gita.
Hare Krishna. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7, Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimutatma kartaham iti manyate. The living entity is dependent on the Supreme Entity, Lord Krishna. But because of false pride, he ignores the Supreme Personality of Godhead and considers himself to be the performer of action and enjoyer of everything. Srila Madhavacharya states that just as a king punishes a rebellious subject, the Supreme Lord punishes the sinful living entity by forcing him to transmigrate from one body to another in the network of the illusory energy.
Yeah, right. I hear always my spiritual master repeating, he said that again and again. Do you realize this body is a machine to give you pain? And here it is said, living entity the Lord punishes the sinful living entity by forcing him to transmigrate from one body to another. So it's a punishment given to us through the illusory energy. And we have a small purpose of Bhaktivedanta Sarasvati Maharaj. Those who are bewildered by false ego claim to be the doers of all activities, which are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. Accepting the material body as the self, they think that they are working independently, although their activities are fully under the control of material nature. Yes. Now, text 11. Evam virakta sayana asanatana machane dashana sparshana ghana bhojana shravanadishu nattata bhadyate vidvam tatra dayam gunam. An enlightened person fixed in detachment engages his body in lying down, sitting. Sorry, maybe someone can read it. It's better we do it together.
An enlightened person fixed in detachment engages his body in lying down, sitting, walking, bathing, seeing, touching, smelling, eating, hearing, and so on, but is never entangled by such activities. Indeed, remaining as a witness to all bodily functions. He merely engages his bodily senses with their objects and does not become entangled like an unintelligent person.
It sounds similar to Bhagavad Gita 5:8-9. Naiva kinshit karomiti yuktmayeta tatvrit pasanskaran spasham shikhanki asnangasnam svapam svasam palapam vichnam hinam unmisam nimisam api Indiart pesu vartateti daryan. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, and or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. So very similar. So although it appears for the liberated soul that he is acting with body and senses, he is always conscious that of his actual position, spiritual engagement. So a Krishna conscious person is never affected by the actions of the senses. He can perform any act except in the service of the Lord, because he knows that he is an eternal servitor of the Lord and not a part and parcel of this material world. So while engaged in bodily functions, an intelligent person is attached to both the means and the end of material life. and therefore experience intense lamentation and jubilation on the material platform. A self-realized soul, however, studies the inevitable defeat and suffering of ordinary persons, and does not make the mistake of trying to enjoy the bodily functions even slightly. He sees the results in this world that he has understood. Jei samspasyabuga dukayana evateatyant van de kantia natu shamate Buddha. And the learned transcendentalists have concluded that one who tries to enjoy, the result is suffering. And it's temporary, it's not worthwhile. So it does not do that. Instead, he remains a detached witness, merely engaging his senses in the normal function of just for bodily maintenance. Let's hear the purport on this short purport, Bhaktivedanta. An intelligent and experienced person is never compelled to act under the influence of the three modes of material nature. He remains detached from activities like sleeping, sitting idly, and traveling, and is not forced to perform activities like looking, touching, smelling, and eating. Now, text 12.3. Yeah, this purpose of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they are usually also in the purport mostly. So, prakatisto pyasam sakto yatakam savitan ilaha vaisharatyeksaya sangha sitaya china samsaya padibudaiva svapnam nanatvat vinivartate. Can someone read the translation, please?
Although the sky or space is the resting place of everything, the sky does not mix with anything, nor is it entangled. Similarly, the sun is not at all attached to the water in which it is reflected within innumerable reservoirs. And the mighty wind, blowing everywhere, is not affected by the innumerable aromas and atmospheres through which it passes. In the same way, a self-realized soul is completely detached from the material body and the material world around it. It is like a person who has awakened and arisen from a dream. With expert vision sharpened by detachment, the self-realized soul cuts all doubts to pieces through knowledge of itself and completely withdraws his consciousness from the expansion of material variety.
This meeting today with the North American.
Sorry, Raj.
Yeah, please continue. There was some disturbances.
Okay.
Go on.
But according to Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, a self-realized soul cuts all doubts to by direct experience of his true spiritual identity. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna, and there is no possibility of any existence separate from Lord Krishna. Such expert knowledge cuts all doubts to pieces. As stated here, Prakitasto api asham shaktaha, like the sky, the sun, or the wind, one who is self-realized is not entangled, though situated within the material creation of the Lord. Nanatva, or material variety, refers to one's material body. The bodies of others and unlimited paraphernalia for bodily sense gratification, both physical and mental. By awakening to Krishna consciousness, one completely retires from illusory sense gratification and becomes absorbed in the progressive realization of the soul situated within the body. As revealed in the example of the two birds in a tree, Both the individual soul and the personality of Godhead are completely separate from the gross and subtle material bodies. But if one turns one's face to the Lord, recognizing one's eternal dependence on Him, there will be no further suffering or anxiety, even though one is still situated within the material world. The unlimited experiences of the material objects only increase one's anxiety, whereas perception of the absolute truth, Sri Krishna, immediately brings one to the platform of peace. Thus one who is intelligent retires from the world of matter and becomes a fully self-realized Krishna-conscious person.
Thank you. The purport of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj is self-realized soul is freed from all doubt when he directly experiences eternal identity. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and nothing is separate from Him. Such an understanding frees one from all doubts as stated here, just like the sky, the sun, or the wind. When we self-realize is not entangled, although situated within the material creation. So it's always coming to the same point. Don't think yourself a part and parcel of this material world, but understand that we are a part and parcel of Krishna. And turn our consciousness towards Krishna. Be situated in your spiritual identity. Text 14. Yasya vita sankalpa panandaya manodiyam frittaya sa vinirmukto deyastopi bihi tat kunai. Summary, please.
A person is considered to be completely liberated from the gross and subtle material bodies when all the functions of his vital energy, senses, mind, and intelligence are performed without material desire. Such a person, although situated within the body, is not entangled.
Yeah, so here we get the symptoms of someone detached from the identification with the body. So the line of thought we are going through here is you worship the good guru, the spiritual master, you get knowledge, then you get liberation, and then the knowledge ceases, you don't need it anymore. So text 14, symptoms of liberation, and then we have a purport of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, always short purports. Those who have no material desires are not influenced by the three modes of material nature, even though they are situated within the material world. Their vital energy, senses, mind, and intelligence are purified when engaged in the devotion and service of Lord Krishna. Non-devotees are the servants of their material desires, whereas devotees are the servants of the Supreme Lord. So, servants of material desires. We lose our time in this material world by running after this phantasmagoria. Srila Prabhupada. Text 15. Yasyatmaim syatehim shrer yena kinchit rachitchaya arshate vakvachit tatra na vyate kriyate buddha. Translation, please.
Sometimes, for no apparent reason, one body is attacked by cruel people for violence animals. At other time and in other place, one will suddenly be offered a great respect or worship. One who have become neither angry when attacked nor satisfied when worshipped is actually intelligent.
Mhm. Okay, that's one. That happens. Do not become angry when attacked, nor satisfied when worshipped. That's an intelligent man. That yes. Can someone read a commentary, please?
Purport. If one does not become angry when attacked for no Maharaj, you wanted me to read the purport or the commentary of Vishnu Chakra?
No, the purport.
Okay. If one does not become angry when attacked for no apparent reason, and if one does not become enlivened when glorified or worshipped, then one has passed the test of self-realization and is considered fixed in spiritual intelligence. Uddhav asked Lord Krishna, Kairva gyayate lakshane, by what symptoms can a self-realized person be recognized? Just as Lord Krishna enlightened Arjun, he now explains the same subject matter to Uddhav. In this verse, the Lord describes symptoms by which it is very easy to recognize a saintly person. For a normal person becomes furious when criticized or attacked, and overwhelmed with joy when glorified by others. There is a similar statement by Yajnavalkya to the effect that one who's actually intelligent does not become angry, though pricked with thorns, and does not become satisfied at heart merely by being worshipped with auspicious paraphernalia such as sandalwood.
Thank you, thank you. Bhaktivedanta Saraswati summarized it in one sentence. A person who is not affected when he is tortured or worshipped is a liberated soul, although living in this world. So that's a high level. We have examples of this, of course. We have the Avadutta Brahman. He tolerated Prahlad Maharaj, tortured by his father. That Haridas Thakur tortured in 24 marketplaces. So many examples of this. That 16. Nastu vita na nindita govata sada sadhava Fatato kunado sabhyam Vakshita samadrintik mani. Yeah, translation please.
It simply says it sees with equal vision and therefore is not affected by that, which is materially good or bad. Indeed, although he observes others performing good and bad work, and speaking properly and improperly, the sage does not praise or criticize anyone.
Yeah, he does not praise or condemn those who act or speak properly or improperly. Srila Bhaktivedanta says that the equipoised sage who does not see material qualities and faults is liberated. He neither glorifies anyone nor blasphemes anyone. That's interesting. That's Ramachandra Puri in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He criticized Lord Chaitanya for eating too much sweets. But generally he followed his advice not to praise anyone, but the criticism, that was something else. Does that mean we cannot glorify and praise devotees? Yes, we can. We can certainly praise their work. But those who are being praised should not think that they are the cause of their expert service and become proud. So not praising and criticizing anyone. Yeah, not praising those who are situated in material nature, but praising the devotees for their devotional service, for their devotion and so on. Yeah, that's not bad. So, but this is knowledge to get to liberation. So praising devotees is on the transcendental platform, beyond it. That, because otherwise we may misinterpret that Mahashringa Prabhu, is your question
Yes,
urgent?
Maharaj. Actually, sorry. Actually, we are praising the qualities, Maharaj, of the devotees, not the devotee. But when we praise the quality, then other devotees are also inspired, and they serve very nicely, and it comes to their attention and notice. And secondly, if we don't praise, then the heart becomes hard. The devotees don't feel the juice. Both the things.
Yeah, but
And
it depends on what situation. That a spiritual master will see that his disciple is still proud, will not praise them. That will more inflate their, aggravate the problem. That so it depends in what situation, but yes, because if we need inspiration and glorification for others to do our service, still there is some false ego also. So it's a point to be considered deeply. That
no, I agree with you, Maharaj. But my situation is like being a temple president. I have to appreciate all the devotees, and then they are encouraged and they serve next time even better.
yeah, sure.
They,
That
they feel appreciated.
yeah, but I mean, it may be not be a sign of pure devotion yet. That but okay, it's good to praise devotees. That but there is but those who are being praised have to be very careful not to think, oh yes, I did it. That's a problem. That text 17. Nakoyana vadat kinshint nadayat sata sadhufa atmaramo nayavitya vicharitsyata vanmuni. Can someone read, please? Yeah.
For the purpose of maintaining his body, a liberated sage should not act, speak, or contemplate in terms of material good or bad. Rather, he should be detached in all material circumstances and take pleasure in self realization. He should wander about engaged in his liberated lifestyle, appearing like a retarded person to outsiders.
That's interesting. Should be detached in all circumstances, take pleasure in self-realization, but then he should wander engaged in this liberated lifestyle, appearing like a retarded person to outsiders. That's like Chad Bharat. Chad Bharat, he was in that situation. That so Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj said that yes, a person who does not possess the above-mentioned qualities should be understood to be a conditioned soul. That, yeah. So, that's something to think about. It seems. Does someone has these qualities here? Otherwise, you are a conditioned soul. Purport Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj said, he has no conception of good and bad because he sees how everything can be used for the satisfaction of the Lord. This is the deep statement. everything is good. We can use it in the service of the Lord. There is no bad. That interesting. That, but I think in the purport, Jiva Goswami, he has another opinion, and we will hear that. Can someone read the purport according to Srila Jiva Goswami?
According to Srila Jiva Goswami, this verse describes a type of discipline recommended for the Gyan yogis, who by intelligence try to understand that they are not their material bodies. One who is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, however, accepts and rejects material things in terms of their usefulness in the loving service of Lord Krishna. One who is trying to preach Krishna consciousness should be seen as very intelligent and not jadvat or stunned as described here. Although a devotee of the Lord does not act, speak or contemplate for his personal sense gratification, he remains very busy working, speaking and meditating in the devotion service of the Lord. The devotee makes elaborate plans to engage all the fallen souls in Lord Krishna's service so they can be purified and go back home, back to Godhead. Merely rejecting material things is not perfect Krishna consciousness, One must see everything as the property of the Lord and meant for the Lord's pleasure. One busily engaged in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement has no time to make material distinctions and thus automatically comes to the liberated platform.
Yes. Just engage in the mission. That so this verse is for the jnana yogis. It's not for the devotees. That is what Jiva Goswami says. Text 18. Sapta brahmani nishnato na nishnayat pareyadi. Shamastasya shamafalo yadenam ivarakshata. Translation, please.
If though meticulously study, one becomes expert in reading Vedic literatures, but makes no endeavor to fix one's mind on the Supreme Person of Godhead, then one's endeavor is certainly like that of a man who works very hard to take care of a cow that gives no milk. In other words, the fruit of one's laborious study of Vedic knowledge will simply be the labor itself. There will be no other tangible result.
Thank you. That yes, maybe someone can read the first paragraph from the purport.
Srila Vishwanath
Go ahead.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the word Pare, the Supreme, in this verse indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, rather than the impersonal Brahman, because Lord Krishna, the speaker of these instructions, makes references in later verses to his personality as the Supreme. An impersonal interpretation in this case would be Eka Deshan Vaya Uttara Shlokarta Tatparya Virodha, or a contradictory interpretation that creates illogical conflict with other shlokas, verses spoken in the same context.
And then the second paragraph also.
It requires great endeavor to take care of a cow. One must either grow food grains to feed the cow or maintain suitable pastures. If the pasture is not properly maintained, poisonous weeds will grow, or snakes will multiply, and there will be danger. Cows are infected by many types of diseases and bugs and must be regularly cleaned and disinfected. Similarly, fences must be maintained around the cow's pasture, and there is even more work to be done. If the cow gives no milk, however, then one certainly performs hard labor with no tangible result. Laborious effort is also required to learn the Sanskrit language well enough to discern the subtle and esoteric meaning of the Vedic mantras. If after such great labor one does not understand the spiritual body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is the source of all happiness in life, and if one does not surrender to the Lord as the supreme shelter of all things, then one has certainly labored hard with no tangible result other than his own labor. Even a liberated soul who has given up the bodily concept of life will fall down if he does not take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word nishnata, or expert, indicates that one must ultimately achieve the goal of life. Otherwise, one is not expert. As stated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prema Pumartha Mahan, the actual goal of human life is love of Godhead, and no one can be considered expert without achieving this goal.
Yes. So even a liberated soul who has given up the bodily concept of life will fall down if it does not take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's statement, Prema Pumartha Mahan, the actual goal of life is love of Godhead, and no one can be considered expert without achieving the goal. Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj purport. The maintainer of a cow that does not give any milk does not receive any profit in exchange for his service. Similarly, the endeavor of a person who has strenuously studied the Vedic literature will not prove fruitful if he has not concluded that he must devote himself to the service of the Supreme Lord. Text 19. Yam dohtadoam asatim sabayam deyam paradinam asat prachamsa vitam tvatirte ketam angavacham inam maya rakshati dukkha. Translation.
My dear Uddhava,
Carry on, bro.
that man is certainly most miserable who takes care of a cow that gives no milk, an unchaste wife, a body totally dependent on others, useless children, or wealth not utilized for the right purpose. Similarly, one who studies Vedic knowledge devoid of my glories is also most miserable.
Yeah, so it must lead to bhakti, factually. That's the message here. That one who maintains a cow that does not produce milk, an unchaste wife, a body that is completely dependent upon others, sons that are not of good character, and wealth that is not used for good purposes, suffers miseries, as do those who do not hear and chant the glories of the Supreme Lord. That text 20. And now gradually we come to the next stage. That so we have heard the symptoms by which one can recognize conditioned liberated persons, but now we will hear about saintly persons and the process of devotional service. Text 20. So many purports. Yasyam name pavanam anga karma stityud bhava prana nirodhamasya lilavatārepsita janma fasya vantyam giram tam pipriyan nadira. My dear Uddhav, an intelligent person should never take to literature that does not contain descriptions of my activities, which purify the whole universe. Indeed, I create, maintain, and annihilate the entire material manifestation. Among all my pastime incarnations, the most beloved are Krishna and Balaram. Any so-called knowledge that does not recognize these activities of mine is simply barren and is not acceptable to those who are actually intelligent. Yeah. These activities, the maintenance, the annihilation, the creation, And then the pastime incarnations, especially about Krishna, Balaram. Krishna says that, so this is, let's read this purport that, can someone read the purport of 20?
The words Lila, Avatara, Ripsita, Janma are very significant here. The Lord's incarnation for executing wonderful pastimes is called Lilavatara, and such wonderful forms of Vishnu are glorified by the names Ramachandra, Narasimhadeva, Kurma, Varaha, and so on. Among all such Lilavataras, however, the most beloved, even to this day, is Lord Krishna, the original source of Vishnu Tattva. The Lord appears in the prison house of Kamsa and is immediately transferred to the rural setting of Vrindavana, where he exhibits unique childhood pastimes with his cowherd boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, and well-wishers. After some time, the Lord's pastimes are transferred to Mathura and Dwarka, and the extraordinary love of the inhabitants of Vrindavana is exhibited in their anguished separation from Lord Krishna. Such pastimes of Lord are Ikshita, or the reservoir of all loving exchanges with absolute truth. The pure devotees of the Lord are most intelligent and expert, and do not pay any attention to useless, fruitless literatures that neglect the highest truth, Lord Krishna. Although such literatures are very popular among materialistic persons all over the world, they are completely neglected by the community of pure Vaishnavas. In this verse, the Lord explains that the literatures approved for the devotees are those that glorify the Lord's pastimes as the Purusha Avatara and the Leela Avataras, culminating in the personal appearance of Lord Krishna himself, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 539. Ramadi Mukteshu Kala Niyamena Tishtan, Nanavataram Akroda Bhuvaneshu Kintu, Krishna Swayam Sambhavat Parama Pumamyo, Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the perennial Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna in different avatars in this world, in the forms of Rama, Narasimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions. Even the Vedic literatures that neglect the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be ignored. This fact was also explained by Narad Muni to Srila Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedas, when the great Vyasadeva felt dissatisfied with this work.
So we see gradually the Vrajavas is there in Krishna's heart, and it has to come out again. He has to tell it now to Uddhav, and hereafter we will also hear how to develop Vraja Bhakti. Very interesting. So before 21, commentary of Bhaktivedanta. In this verse, the Lord explains that the literature approved for the devotees are those that glorify the Lord's pastimes as Purusha avatars and the Lila avatars, culminating in the personal appearance of Lord Krishna himself. Even Vedic literature that neglects the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be ignored. This fact was also explained by Narad to Srila Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedas, when the great Veda Vyas felt dissatisfied with his work. That's an interesting comparison. So this verse explains that the literature approved for the devotees are those who glorify the Lord's pastimes. That text 21. Evam chichna saya puya nanatva brahmam atmani uparameta virajam manomav yahya sarvaje. Translation, please.
Coming to this conclusion of all knowledge, one should give up the false conception of material variety that one imposes upon the soul and thus cheats one's material existence. The mind should be fixed on me, since I am all pervading.
Good. So the path of Hyan is interesting only with those who do not know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The path of Hyan is interesting only for one who does know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Balnam Hyanamante Hyanamama Prapachte Vasudev Savamiti Samatma Sudurlava. Such Hyan is after many births, many births. They come to the conclusion, oh, Vasudev is everything, Krishna is everything. So that's for them, these verses. But one should know why the Lord is all pervading. And therefore, can someone read the second paragraph, which is on the screen of the purport?
Everything is ultimately an expansion of Krishna, and therefore there is really no other object of meditation besides Krishna. Meditation upon any other object is also meditation on Krishna, but is imperfectly performed, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita by the word avidhipurvakam. The Lord also states in the Gita that all living entities are on the path back home, back to Godhead. Because of ignorance, however, some of them go backward or stop along the way, foolishly thinking that their journey is finished, when in fact they are suspended in one of the minor potencies of the Supreme Lord. If one wants to intimately understand the nature of the absolute truth, one must take to the path of love of Godhead, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktya mama bijanati, yavan yasyashmicha tatvata, tato mam tatvato gyatva vishate tat anantaram.
So,
one can understand the... Sorry.
Yeah, please go.
One can understand the Supreme Personality as He is only by devotional service. And one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God.
Thank you. I think. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Text 22. Yes, ma'am. Onder Prabhupada Priya.
Raj, I became a little scared here when it said that the knowledge in the previous verses that Krishna described the lifestyle and approach of the impersonal philosophers who meditate on the distinction between matter and spirit, and Krishna rejects that and says here that this path of Gyan is interesting only to one who does not know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I was thinking that he's referring to the verses that we did in class yesterday, right? About, so
yes.
I really like that kind of discussion. Does that mean that I have some impersonal tendencies?
No, the Hyan has a supporting function, but for devotees it's secondary always. It's not the first thing is to serve Krishna, perform devotional service, but hearing this Hyan helps to see the futility of this material world, and let things go. But that's more or less the negative, and the devotees are not so much in the negative. They want to serve Krishna and experience love, and that's the positive. But it's helpful that because, especially on the path to devotional service, many they need this intellectual knowledge of how to become liberated, and that will convince them. But but Krishna says it's factually not so important. The essence is devotional service. But it has a supporting function. But we will see now in verse text 22, we will go to Bhakti. We will have gone from Hyan to Bhakti. Yatyani sudaya itum mano brahmani nishalam maisarvani karmani nirapeksha samachara. Translation, please.
My dear Uddhava, if you are not able to free your mind from all material disturbances and thus absorb it completely on the spiritual platform, then perform all your activities as an offering to me, without trying to enjoy the fruits.
Yeah, Patram Pushpam Phalam. That seems very similar to the 12th chapter also of Bhagavad Gita. So if one offers one's activities to Lord Krishna without trying to enjoy the results, one's mind will become purified. So that's in the purport. I just list the points in the purport. When one's mind is purified, transcendental knowledge automatically manifests. Such knowledge is a byproduct of pure consciousness. So that's the real knowledge, the realized knowledge. So one is then raised to the platform of pure spiritual consciousness, because all this Hyan may bring you to goodness, but then in goodness you get the real knowledge, but then you have to practice it, and the practice of this knowledge is Krishna consciousness. That brings us to Vihe. So one is then raised to the platform of spiritual consciousness. By practical devotional service to the Supreme Lord, spiritual knowledge automatically awakens in one's heart. That we had before. Yanyat, Yas, Jnana, Vairagam. Automatically, knowledge and detachment manifest as a byproduct of devotional service. Yanyat, Yas, Vairagam. By practical devotional service to the Supreme Lord, spiritual knowledge automatically awakens in one's heart. Dami Buddhyohantam, Bhagavad Gita 10:10. One cannot fix oneself on the spiritual platform by mere speculation or philosophical categories. So that Jiva Goswami states that if one does not have faith in the personal form and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one will not have the spiritual strength to remain perpetually on the transcendental platform. The conclusion of all philosophy is pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord Krishna. That's the conclusion. So Hyan has moved to Bhakti. A lot of commentaries, you can read them. But we have to move on. That's text 23-24. Shadalurmat gata shimvan subhadra lokapavani kayananusmaran karma chanmatsabhinayan muhu madakte dharma kamartam acharan mat apasraya labate nishalam bhaktim mayudava sanatane. Someone can read the translation.
My dear Uddhav, narrations of my pastimes and qualities are all auspicious and purify the entire universe. A faithful person who constantly hears, glorifies, and remembers such transcendental activities, who through dramatic performances relieves my pastimes, beginning with my appearance, and who takes full shelter of me, dedicating his religious, sensual, and occupational activities for my satisfaction, certainly obtains unflinching devotional service to me, the eternal personality of Godhead.
So, hear, glorify, and remember, especially the Bhagavatam, that dramatic performances, that very nice drama. Krishna said, perform dramas, like in the time of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya, he liked to have dramas with the devotees, and we know Rupa Goswami wrote so many dramas also, that very beautiful dramas, the 6 Goswamis. We will see in these verses, we see so many practices that we do in ISKCON, in our movement. And it's all what Krishna says here, that, yes, celebrate his appearances, beginning with my appearances. That now, this purport, can someone read just the second paragraph, which is on the screen?
Lord Krishna's pastimes of stealing butter from the elderly gopis, enjoying life with the cowherd boyfriends and his young gopis, playing his flute and engaging in the rasa dance, etc., are all auspicious spiritual activities, and they are fully described in the 10th canto of this work. There are many authorized songs and prayers glorifying the pastimes of the Lord, and by constantly chanting them, one will automatically be fixed in smaranam, or remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord exhibits his opulences upon his birth in Kamsa's prison, and at the birth ceremony subsequently performed by Nanda Maharaj in Gokul. The Lord further performed many adventurous activities, such as chastising the serpent Kalia and many other irresistible demons. One should regularly take part in the ceremony commemorating Krishna's pastime, such as Kamastami celebration glorifying the Lord's birth. On short days, one should worship the deity of Lord Krishna and the spiritual master, and thus remember the Lord's pastimes.
Oh, very practical. In the 3rd paragraph, it's explained the word dharma in this verse indicates that one's religious activities should always be in connection with Krishna. So give charity to the Brahmins, give protection to the cows, because the Brahmins and the cows are very dear to Krishna. And there are so many recommendations in this 3rd paragraph that you can go to it, and also in the 4th paragraph, so much practical advice is there. So the conclusion is, yes, the real meaning of religion is to constantly serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose form is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. So this purport reflects completely the purport of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj, that Jiva Goswami comments, in the beginning one should follow this injunction strictly, later it will be followed naturally. It will become natural in due course if one follows these injunctions. Now we will go to text 25, that's the last verse, and then we will have a break. That last verse for today is Satsanga Lapdaya Bhaktya Maimam Sa Upashita Savaime Dakshitam Satbir Angyasa Vindate Phalam. Translation, please.
One who has obtained pure devotional service by association with my devotees always engages in worshipping me. Thus he very easily goes to my abode, which is revealed by my.
Yeah, thank you. revealed by my pure devotees. Yeah. One was obtained pure devotion service by association with my devotees. So that's the way to obtain it, pure devotion service, associating with pure devotees. And then it becomes easy, Krishna says. So we have here a commentary that someone can read the first paragraph, please.
In the previous verses, Lord Krishna has emphasized the value of surrendering to him in loving service. One may ask how such surrender or devotion is actually achieved. The Lord gives the answer in this verse. One must live in a society of devotees, and thus automatically one will be engaged 24 hours a day in the various processes of devotional service, beginning with Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam, hearing, glorifying, and remembering the Lord. The pure devotees of the Lord can reveal the spiritual world by their transcendental sound vibration, making it possible for even a neophyte devotee to experience the Lord's abode. Being thus enlivened, the neophyte makes further progress and gradually becomes qualified to personally serve the personality of Godhead in the spiritual world. By constantly associating with devotees and learning from them about devotional service, one quickly achieves a deep attachment for the Lord and the Lord's service. And such attachment gradually matures into pure love of Godhead.
Chai, yeah. So this commentary is identical with Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj commentary. How is surrender and devotion actually achieved? So one must live in a society of devotee, and thus automatically one will be engaged 24 hours a day in various processes of devotional service, beginning with Shravana, Kirtanam, Smaranam, and so on. So by constantly associating with devotees and learning from them about devotional service, one quickly achieves a deep attachment for the Lord and the Lord's service, and such attachment gradually matures into pure love of God. So in the second paragraph, Srila Prabhupada warns about bad association of impersonalists and those who are envious of the devotees. So that's the section we have covered today. And we will now have a break. Let's see what's the time now. It's 4:15. So we will resume at 4:25 p.m. That's Hare Krishna.
Recording stopped.
Hare Krishna. We can resume that with
Recording in progress.
if there are any questions that yeah, on that point of it's not online anymore, I see. That Sringapur. He said as a temple president, when I glorify the devotees, they become very enthusiastic. That then they cooperate and so on. That's very nice. But what I meant here is that glorification cannot be done indiscriminatively. That the Srila Prabhupada, many times. It's devotees were thinking Srila Prabhupada, is going to glorify me for my service. But then Srila Prabhupada did not do that because they felt a little proud within, and then they understood that. So that's the point. Anyway, are there any other comments on this chapter? That about
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Maharaj, in the Upanishad, Mantra 11.
Mantra 11, She's Upanishad. Yeah.
Mantra 11 says that nuisance and knowledge goes side by side.
Yeah.
So here we are told that reading literatures that are not glorifying the Supreme Lord should be condemned. So then why do we study geography, biology, chemistry, physics in school?
Yeah, the point is that, if you get this knowledge, then this knowledge in itself is not mundane if you connect it with Krishna. So it depends, because you quote Ishapanishad Mantra 11, learn the purpose of nations and that of transcendental knowledge side by side. So we need both. Because we are not yet on the liberated platform. If we are on the liberated platform, then but when we are still on our material svadharma, then we must deal with this material world. But we must know what's binding and what's not binding. And that's important. Otherwise we become entangled. So why do we study geography? What can we learn from history? Srila Prabhupada said, the problem is we don't learn from history. That history is always the same. Some war, someone wins, someone is a loser. They are all losers at the end. But to what point do you refer, Pavitra Prabhu, in the knowledge that we heard, that make you think that we should not study geography and all these mundane subject matters? Do you hear me?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anyway, Mother Prabhupada Priya, please.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I had asked you that question before about the, the importance of the things that we were just discussing yesterday about how material existence is just, an illusion or dream or whatever.
Yeah.
And we need to wake up and live our real lives. And so I kind of like, when we got to text 22, where it says, coming to the conclusion of all knowledge, giving up the false conception of material variety that one imposes on the soul, then one ceases one's material existence, then the mind can become fixed on Krishna. Whereas the next, so that seems to be the highest thing. That's like, like you were saying how that echoes those verses from chapter 12, where Krishna says, just absorb your consciousness completely in me. But if you can't do that, then it seems like the best thing is to really just understand that this material world is not important. It's not something to engage with, but just fix your mind on me and just totally just be a devotee. But then the text 22 is like, but if you can't free your mind from all material disturbance and absorb it on the spiritual platform, then just perform your activities as an offering to him with detachment. So I was realizing that, the importance of those verses is that it enables us to just let go of all those material things, material relationships, material associations. They're just not important at all. The only thing that's important is serving Krishna. But the problem is that as long as we maintain attachment to those things, then, so we're attached to engaging with the world. So Krishna is saying, if you need to engage with the world, because of being attached to it, then just whatever you're attached to, just offer it to me. Whatever you do, yad karoshi, yad asnashi, whatever you're going to do anyway, because of your attachments, just try to do it as an offering to me. And it's not pure bhakti, but at least, there's a connection and you're trying and you'll gradually become purified. So I was kind of appreciating the value of, and I don't really accept this thing that knowledge is rejected and that it's only for impersonal philosophers. I think it's also very valuable for devotees, and that's what Krishna is saying here, actually, in this very verse that says that it's not so important. But I guess it's not the end in itself. That's the idea. It's not the end in itself. It should lead one to bhakti, right? That the wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts.
Yeah, well, if Krishna wanted us only to get knowledge of bhakti, then Bhagavad Gita could be very short. But it speaks also about the Hyanis and the Yogis and their practice, because these yogas are stages of coming to bhakti, but we can, as a means, the devotional service is the means and the end. But even if we take directly to devotional service, we are also going to these stages. So it's good to have this knowledge while we are going to these stages. Then we can see that whether we are on track. And then we come to the point of liberation. And once we are beyond liberation, after 30, 40 years practice or a few lifetimes, then we don't need this knowledge anymore. But that's a high level. So that it seems it's in agreement with Bhagavad Gita. The Uddhav Gita is like a second Bhagavad Gita in some sense. But it's...
like some devotees, they take to devotional service. They're still very materially attached, but they're also attracted to devotional service for whatever reasons. Then their material attachments may become too strong, and then they go away.
Yeah.
So it's missing the knowledge component.
Yeah, right. That also sometimes on the path of devotional service we have difficulties, and hearing this knowledge will give us strength again. Like we see Arjuna, after Krishna disappeared, then he went, I'm just reading the end of the Mahabharata, where Arjuna is bringing all Krishna's widows and all these queens to Hastinapur, and he's attacked by this bowman, and of course he doesn't have the strength as before. They are with thousands and thousands of men, nothing he can do. That and and then he gets depressed, he gets in difficulty. But then by remembering the instructions of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he gets strength again. So that helps us, this knowledge. This knowledge cannot, this Hyan knowledge cannot bring us to devotional service, but it can bring us to the point that it can give us strength and direction and on the way to, while performing devotional service. Like, we have to fix our mind on Krishna. So this knowledge about Dayate, Vishyapunsa, Sanghastesha Bhajayate, you don't do that. One of the roaming senses can kill your devotional service, so you are very careful. You become like a kurma, a tortoise, and all this knowledge is very practical. Don't eat too much, don't eat too less. It's all also for us, this knowledge. But once you come on the higher level, beyond liberation, it becomes automatically spontaneous. And that is what Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj says. Yes, it becomes spontaneous at a certain moment.
In the beginning, it helps us to not take our material problems and issues too seriously.
Yeah,
Very useful.
it helps. It helps, but it's only theoretical knowledge, my experience, and you know that, but then the attachment is so strong that it overcomes you, and it takes a while before the heart is purified to overcome that. But still, this knowledge is a guiding principle that supports our devotional service. And by that we know, pravrittisha, nivrittisha. The devotee knows what to do, what not to do. The demons, they don't know. So we know what to do because we take Krishna's instruction in Bhagavad Gita serious. So it has a supporting function. This knowledge can bring you to goodness. And goodness is a platform from which we transcend by devotional service. So, and goodness is the best platform in the material world that you can have. And therefore devotees, they are supposed to live in goodness. And all this knowledge is there to come to goodness. That this Hyan section in the Bhagavad Gita from chapter 13 to 17, very useful. Does that help?
Yes, Raj, I had a related question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
This is actually, it came to me after yesterday's class, because there are a lot of verses there about how, the lamentation and grief and jubilation, those things are all just illusory. They're not, it's just, like it says here, gunar api gunesh, it's just the modes interacting with other modes. It's not really us. I was wondering about this in relation to a concept called spiritual bypassing. Are you familiar with that? It means like, somebody has like a real problem, like let's say, a loved one leaves their body or something like that. And they actually, instead of taking time to grieve in a healthy way, they just kind of bypass the whole thing, like, oh, the soul's eternal and these relationships are temporary and it doesn't matter. And then, but because they're not actually on that level, then they have grief, but they're kind of just either denying it or repressing it, and then with the result that it has psychological mental health effects, or it can even result in physical health problems. So I'm wondering, what's the proper perspective on this?
Yeah, well,
how to be
Well-
on this knowledge, but not in a harmful way.
Yeah, the first thing one must know is, what is my level of advancement? That's important. That this lamentation and this hankering, that, yeah, if one is practically free from that, then it's naturally that one will not lament, one will not do it. But it must be natural. If it's not natural, and you try to push yourself on a higher level that you are, that's just hypocrisy, it's cheating, and it will backfire. But also there is a point of compassion. One is on a high level of realization, but the other person not. That's if the other person is suffering, you must help them, and try to help them to overcome. That's a devotee. He cannot see the suffering of others, and he feels their suffering. And especially when one is spiritually advanced, then one knows how to overcome it, and it's a duty to help that person, to help to overcome it. And we see Lord Krishna after the Battle of Kurukshetra, his business, all these widows, and so he was consoling them personally. Personally, he was taking care of them. That is when he, and especially Dhritarashtra, who lost his 100 sons, and Gandhari, that Gandhari cursed Krishna, but he tolerated it. Yeah. So that's an important point you make. The neophyte thinks I'm on a high platform, but we should be careful. It's not that we understand that we are not his body, but if we are conditioned, we have to be very careful and keep our mind balanced. If we don't keep our mind balanced, then further spiritual advancement will be very difficult. So that process of grievance, that is mostly for those who are conditioned. It's a very important process to go through. But you can go through it with the guidance of transcendental knowledge. Like, here you have the example in the Bhagavatam. Even Hiranyakashipu was preaching to the widows of Hiranyaksha, and when he was giving them transcendental knowledge, and that helped them to overcome. So it's helpful to overcome, and it can be used as a help to overcome this grievance. But one must take help of it, not just neglect the whole thing. I'm a spirit soul, I don't care about it. Then it's going wrong. So that's a perspective I was thinking of.
That's great. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And we will hear from Kasturica.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yesterday you made a point that once we are completely self-realized, we don't need this knowledge.
Yeah.
Also, today I was listening to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was giving an example how impersonalists, when they reach to certain level, they reject the guru and they reject the knowledge.
Yeah.
Of course, I know the difference between the devotees and impersonalists. But then Prabhupada was giving an example that how the impersonalists use the ladder to climb to a particular stage and they kick off the ladder.
Yeah.
So how do we not become like imbibe those impersonal tendencies, but actually um, understand these points.
Yeah. Well,
Eternal, right? Like we have eternal relationship.
but
So we should not develop that impersonal tendency that I don't need guru
no.
at a certain stage. So I'm a bit confused between both the points. How do I put in right understanding?
Well, the point there is that yes, when we become liberated, we don't need this Hyan and this knowledge anymore for ourselves. We don't need it. But others need it. A devotee is, when he sees the suffering from others, he wants to, help them to overcome their suffering. And therefore he needs this knowledge to explain them. He needs this knowledge, and he knows this knowledge better than the others because he has realized it. He can explain him how to do it because he did it. Therefore this knowledge becomes very important. Then we become spiritual master, trying to help others, the spreading of Krishna consciousness, and that makes us very dear to Krishna. So for a devotee, this knowledge remains very, very valuable. That he may have realized it, but he wants to give it to others and to help them also to become liberated. Of course, for us, this knowledge is always in relation with devotional service. The Hyan is directed toward leading us to devotional service. And we see that in the purpose of Prabhupada, in Bhagavad Gita and so on. He's using this knowledge always in the framework of Krishna consciousness. So that's important. So for us, this knowledge remains very valuable and important. Does that help, Mother? Kasturi?
Yes, Maharaj. And also, will the Guru will be always eternally in relation to us even when we go to spiritual world?
There was some disturbance. If you can say it again.
So if a conditioned soul he leaves to the spiritual world, will he still be in relationship with his spiritual master?
Oh, that's a good point. That you can read about that. Yeah, so your question is, if one goes back to the spiritual world, that does one have still a relationship with one's spiritual master? You can read Brihad Bhagavatamritam, the story of Gopkumar. At the end, Gopkumar becomes spiritual master, and he helps a Brahman to return to the spiritual world. And it is Gopkumar, when this Brahman arrives in the spiritual world, that Gopkumar introduces him to Krishna. So my Guru Maharaj Bhakti Charamaj said that also. Your spiritual master will be there to introduce you to Krishna. So that's in Brihad Bhagavatamrita from Sanatana Goswami. That's the scriptural reference. Does that help, Mother Kasturi?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, something else? Because next chapter will be on beyond renunciation and knowledge. And that's Vraja Bhakti we will hear. Mother
Maharaj, you'll complete the chapter tomorrow, the 11th chapter?
I try my best to complete it, because I'm going to it in the same way as Purichan Prabhu went to it. And I don't want to miss any valuable points, but I expect tomorrow to end the chapter and to begin the next chapter beyond renunciation, because then Krishna will speak about the most confidential knowledge, the highest. He will lead us to Vrindavan. We will hear again about Vrindavan. So I will try my best to finish it tomorrow and even go to the next chapter. Mother Prabhupada, Priya, please.
Maharaj, when we were reading the verse about how one doesn't become angry when they're attacked, or satisfied when they're worshipped, so I was thinking, well, if a transcendental person is attacked by someone, how is it that they don't become angry? And then I thought there are a few different ways they could view it. So one is that they could just see that it's, like was mentioned, the modes of nature, interacting with the modes of nature, and they don't blame the person, they don't take the situation very seriously. Otherwise, they could see it as a reaction to their previous karma, that they did something to deserve it. And then in other ways, they could see that actually it's just directly the will of the Lord for their purification or for some lesson or to direct them a certain way, whatever. So how does a transcendental person see it? Is it one of those three, or a combination of the three, or something else?
No, these three are there. So the first thing you said is, it's the modes of nature. I'm a spiritual, nothing to do with the whole situation. And then the next is the Tatena Kampam verse. Yes, I deserve it. Krishna gives me only a bit of the reaction. And the third is, it's the will of the Lord. He wants me to be in that situation somewhere or another. That he wants me, And I think the third situation is really the situation of the Pandavas. The Pandavas, they were pure. There was no reaction or something, and that's the point that was made by Bhishma Dev to Yudhishthira Maharaj. It's the plan of the Lord. You have to act within the plan of the Lord. So I think these three are related. That the reality is that we are not suffering in this world, but we think we are this body, therefore we suffer. But everything what we get in this world are reactions for our past activities, and the reaction is given to us by Krishna, and that's the third factor. So it's Krishna always who does it finally. And the devotee sees this, when he's self-realized, then he sees the Lord's hands in everything and becomes peaceful. So I think it's a bit a combination of the three mostly. The Uttama Adhikar sees the hand of the Lord in everything and has realized I'm not his body. And yes, it's my karma. What can I do? I'm the lowest, because he thinks he's the lowest. So that's these three I would say these three perspectives are all true, but they can appear in a pure devotee, all three at the same time. And that I find fascinating. That's a good point. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Yeah. Good. Then we continue tomorrow. Hardly going to the Vraja Bhakti, because that's where Krishna wants to go. Back to Vrindavan. Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhupada.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Recording stopped.
Glory to you.
Hare Krishna.